Wait, it still says that Brennan's muted.
You want to do it?
Yeah, but it's okay if you're not. I'm still presenting to everyone. I can hear you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the second in our series, PTP Summer Webinar Series focused on opportunities to make data work for students in the education feedback. My name is Brennan Partner. I'm the Service Director of Stakeholder Engagement here at PTP HQ. And I'm excited today to be joined by Sandy Jacobs, who's the principal at Council and also in my mind, the eminent expert on policy. So we're excited to have you here. Join us in our offices today. Like I said, this is the second in a summer-long series about opportunities with education feedback. And we'll have a slide going up on the screen to show you some of the other opportunities coming up in the coming weeks through the end of August to talk about other parts of the law and how we can take advantage of the regulations around these data and then before we dive in, I do just want to say a couple of housekeeping things. So first of all, if you're on Twitter, please be along with us using hashtag ESSA. PQC will be tweeting and we hope you'll join in the conversation. I had tweeted out the other day, although I know that some teachers will join us for the conversation. So when we are talking about strong teachers and leaders today, you might consider throwing in the hashtag teachers to engage in that conversation. And also, if you're willing, there is a chat box if you're joining us from Hangout. If you wouldn't mind typing in there who you are and where you're joining us from, it can give us a sense of who's online and what kind of experience and background you may have. And while I'm at it, if you do have a question, that chat box on Google Hangout or the comment box on if you're watching through YouTube is the best way to ask questions of Sandy and I. And I would say I think it's meant to have more positive things in the YouTube comments in the world in general. So we hope good, smart education policy questions can help turn the tide. So like I said, we're really in a series about opportunities in the every student feedback data work for students. And in our last webinar a couple of weeks ago, we talked about self-reporting and the opportunity to really, I think, is more than opportunity, obligation to revamp state report cards and really get data into the hands of communities, of taxpayers, and families. And now, in today's world, when you put your car in a restaurant, and the person you're going to date, using the internet, you should have a reliable source of information online about how schools are doing and prospective students as well. And the good news is that while we're going to see opportunities, there's also money for report card design and assets. So we're excited to see which states take this opportunity to update the report cards to really meet people's needs. And part of the requirements in ESSA is that what we do is application. There are also some things about teachers, which is the perfect segue to our conversation today. We're going to really be talking about the opportunities in the law for states to be thinking about policies, practices, and data to promote a strong educator workforce. So, sorry, there's a few more things, and then it's going to be after this. So I will not. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we think are the big opportunities above the fold for states and allows to be considering in light of the new everything that feedback. So you'll see we have 4 key takeaways. And I think the first of those is really this is an opportunity to reset the conversation. So whether you see that every student feedback as a monumental seismic shift and returning responsibility to the state where they certainly some of that, or you feel like, well, I didn't really do that much different. Either way, it's an opportunity within the state to talk differently about schools and the quality background testing and come forward, get into the privacy. What a chance to say, hey, we heard you, we're going to do something different. law is an opportunity to use data in different ways. So much of even broader picture that we can give out. Stakeholder engagement is so important in this process. And it's so important that they're actually requiring people to do it in the law. But doing this well, I think, can really make or break the importance of this bill. And all the listening scores that are hearing up are amazing, but it's so listen to their stakeholders, but to ask them the feedback they receive. You get so much more value when you can see your feedback in a process, your feedback in planning, or if it's not there, at least you understand why it wasn't that feedback. I also want to quickly plug CDC for policy priorities. So if you're familiar with the data quality campaign across the country, it's providing roadmaps and recommendations for students to help employ data as a resource for improving outcomes. And our core policy priorities that are listed in newsletter, while not written in response to ESSA, can help states meet their other goals and even go beyond that. I mean, this is really about a long game, probably going to be at least a decade before we have another version of the law. This is just about creating their accountability plans this spring. This is about creating comprehensive education states. This is about policy priorities, budget matters, make states responsible, be transparent across guarantee access and privacy. So let's get there to that broader goal. So finally, time to dive in on this topic of race and years. Frankly, every student that doesn't say a ton about teachers. This is really a place where there is some of that flexibility and time at the state level. But it is also an opportunity, and what is inherent in the law is to think about equity and how all kids and teachers, regardless of their disability background, much bigger conversation about that going on right now. So it's an important time to think about how to do education as one goal. So I'm going to turn to you, to talk about some of the things that you see in this. Yeah, so for having me as part of the conversation today. I think, although you're absolutely right, that if you look at Title II as a part of it, massive spotlight on teacher issues, making sure that all kids have effective teachers, and as we specifically use that language around effective, not the past language around qualified teachers. It's really essentially a big teacher and an opportunity for students. Like I said, you set the conversation about what they're doing. So just briefly to give everybody an overview of the provisions of ESSA. So first, looking through a slide, looking at the ESSA architecture. You want it? Okay. So, the Department of Education released the draft regulation about a month ago. There's, 100 pages of regulation, but I think if you don't have time to do that all in my new detail, if you bring it to the last 7 or 8 pages, to talk about the environment state plans are really the action in these regs. And what we see is that the around standards and assessment, accountability in school and business, certainly supporting excellent educators, and supporting for all students to well-rounded students. And then for the two process issues that Gator has to do in previous steps, one already, actually both you already mentioned, one being stakeholder consultation and the other being continuous improvement. And so particularly the stakeholder piece and the continuous improvement piece means that to all aspects of ESSA, states really have an opportunity to be thinking newly and differently and well about supporting teachers and leaders. And then so to show you specifically about the excellent educators piece, there are several different ways that states have to do this as well. Starting with sort of the Title II requirements, right? How are you going to spend your Title II money? What are states going to ask districts to tell them about how they're going to spend their Title II money? But also the issues around the educator development, retention, and advancement. And I think if you look at the definition of professional development, that's changed. Really an opportunity to move towards systemic thinking and not just isolated activities. That's huge opportunity. But what I really think the sun has arrived and said is around these equity provisions and equitable access. And if we're not making sure that all our kids have access to great teachers, then we're not meeting the requirements of the law and the goals of what we want for our education system. So specifically the equity conversation is, I really hope it's going to drive in the district for them. And
is there, to pick up on that a little bit, anything you've seen that you're already doing that looks promising as we move towards education?
And I do think that states, as they embark on these new tours, are, the early indications are that states are right on.
Yeah.
Stakeholder engagement, check. Personal advocacy, check. I think that's promising. But I also think that states are looking for how to get new voices to the table that aren't always part of these conversations. So, the idea that there's one teacher in the state, right, they're going to show up and be the voice of the educators is really not stakeholder engagement. So, I think states are thinking about how they can get multiple voices and multiple perspectives to be part of that, and that's really exciting. I think that there's been a lot of conversation about how we have moved activity evaluation and effectiveness away from the fed back to the state, and it's always been in the state. And in some states, comes to the definition of effectiveness and ineffectiveness when it comes to that thinking and even reporting on equitable distribution. Some states are really far along in that thinking. But even for those states, there's an opportunity to reflect, look at what the data is telling you about what you're doing, and see if there are.
Yeah, that one seems to really go back to the reset of the conversation. To me, that even if you've done your policy making on your evaluation of the last couple years, we have a fabulous teacher intern in office this summer who talking about, my state evaluating on efficiency rather than growth, and they've changed the past 4 times in 4 years. So what an opportunity to recalibrate and trust in practice. Yeah.
Well, one thing I hear people talking about is how we need to move the evaluation system away from being about accountability and thinking about professional learning. I hope they were never focused on accountability. And haven't been very good about that. And maybe what we've done on the support side isn't enough. That there's way more work to do there. But the idea that there's a fundamental shift going on, I don't think that's the case. And I really hope it's not. I think we have the foundation.
Okay, I hope that's true. If you want our teacher or someone in the state listening, I'd love to people chime in because it's certainly been a strong conversation over the past couple of years, but
you're right, it was never about so-called fire rate defensiveness. It was always about developing and retaining a high quality teacher. And I think it's exciting and timely to be placing this focus on equitable distribution of teachers and showing that that's really a tool for making sure that every kid has a high quality educator. I did want to tell one anecdote about one thing one state is doing from their equity plan, but I'd love to hear some of the other things that you think they could be doing, thinking about as they're defining what effectiveness really looks like. One state, Massachusetts, is part of their equity plan is using data, which we at DTC love, to, and they look at it at the student level, and I hope I'm speaking about this in correct details, and look if that student has been assigned to someone over the past couple of years who's maybe inexperienced or out of field, and don't let it go past that. Don't let it go a third year. So it's not about singling out the teacher, but it's really a tool at that school level, principal level, to make sure that kids are having the opportunity to have access to at least not teachers who we weren't going to have proposed.
Actually, I'm so glad that you have a positive example because I'm going to tell a little bit of a cautionary example. One thing that I've seen in a lot of equity plans that I'm a little concerned is going to spill over into state comprehensive consolidated plans is what I'm going to call a lift all boats strategy. Identifying things that are weaknesses in teacher policy across the board, whether it's on teacher preparation or licensure. And those things absolutely need to be fixed, and we want to make improvements across the board, but we're not really addressing equity issues when we lift all boats, right? We need targeted strategies to make sure that the most at-risk kids, the most at-risk schools are getting the great teachers that they need, and that Massachusetts example sounds exactly like that.
Direction, yeah, sure, yeah. So what should they be thinking about as they're thinking about defining effective teaching? Certainly from our perspective, we'd like to see they continue to use multiple measures, certainly not only test scores, have understanding teacher quality. We'd love to see smart stakeholder engagement about what does the community value as a high quality teacher, but what else should they be thinking about?
I also get a little nervous when I hear people say, now we're going to make sure all systems are multiple measures, because I don't know of a system that's been put in place anywhere that wasn't based on multiple measures. Now, that doesn't mean the measures are good, right? So here's an opportunity to look at the data you've been getting from those measures. Are they actually telling you something about teacher performance? Are they telling teachers something about teacher performance? Are teachers getting the information and feedback and data that they need? And if they're not, let's pause and rethink these measures. And in some cases, I think places are going to see, well, actually the measure itself is the problem. And in some places, I think we're going to see we didn't put enough training into making sure that our observers, our evaluators, even our teachers really understand how to use this. And so, figuring out where the problem is, the baby, the bathwater is, you can't take that for granted. But really, this is the opportunity to look at that data and see what it's telling you.
Absolutely. So going on the slightly flip side of that about getting data into the hands of teachers, one of the things that we've been talking about, or some of the things that we've been talking about, opportunities in ESSA, is there's a lot of new disaggregation of new types of information, different classifications of student performance. So for instance, that military connected youth, homeless students, and foster students, there's also going to be new reporting across cardiac absence, which is incredibly valuable. But I'm concerned a little that states or even schools are just saying, here's a new disaggregation, go act on it. And so that's one thing I was going to go back to the conversation about professional development. We were excited to see included in Title II that one of the allowable uses is to do training on data literacy and privacy. Obviously, protection, security data have been a huge concern among parents and the public over the past 3 or 4 years now. And the best front line of defense for that is teachers who can demonstrate how data are valuable and how they're kept safe. But you also make a good point that there is a long list in Title II, and what we don't need is people to just sort of throw funds around willy-nilly, but really think strategically about what we can do here. Can you talk a little bit more about the opportunities you see there?
Yeah, I think the strategic planning piece is so key, and really that clock has started now. we've been referring to ESSA as a sprint followed by a marathon, right? There's all sorts of stuff that has to happen in the next year that states and districts are really going to be scrambling and working hard to get done very quickly. And then there's the long haul of implementation. But I think Title II in particular is an area, I think at the state level, there's a lot of focus and attention on the accountability systems, the assessments, the pieces that feel much more, that's right, that feel much higher priorities and are getting a lot of attention, and it's easy sort of at the end to say, oh, what about that Title II part of the plan? Or that the people way over here are working on the Title II plan, and no one actually, until the very last minute, has the time to see, well, are these things that we're saying integrated across all the various aspects of our plan? And so I think there's a little worry that Title II plans end up looking not so different than what states were doing before. And at the district level, I think people generally don't have a large appetite for messing with how those Title II dollars have been spent. In a lot of districts, they're used for class size reduction, and that's paying teacher salaries. And even though the class size reduction in those districts may not be to the point that the research tells us is necessary to really get an impact, it's still hard to undo that. And the uses around professional development, everyone might think, no one really thinks we're getting the most bang for our buck, but do we really have the time, energy, and motivation to really rethink that? And so the time for those rethinking conversations, starting with those stakeholder conversations, is really now. And we're gonna keep doing what we do until somebody actually says, are we satisfied with what we're getting? And is there something, this is the opportunity for that rethink and
And I think, those of us who get interested at this 50,000, 20,000, whatever high level of fees that we sit at, be really looking for those bright spots. That's a hard conversation to have. How should we go about what we've always done really differently, especially if it comes with federal compliance, right? So looking for those stories. But you're talking about class size reduction and teacher salary. We're going to be joined by Marguerite Rosa in this series in a few weeks, and I'm sure she'll have some interesting things to say about that as well.
I think you also said right that the next reauthorization probably is a decade away at best. This is a once in a generation reset, and so if we don't really invest in the planning, and like you said, it's easy for us to say sitting here in our Washington offices, right? We're not the people who actually have to do it in states and districts. But we're just not going to move forward if we keep doing it.
I agree. So the title of this webinar is really about strong teachers and leaders, and I think as often goes, a lot of the conversation and focus is on teachers, but what about school leaders? I mean, it's such an important part of this.
Yeah, I think actually ESSA made some pretty good provisions to make sure that the conversation wouldn't be just about teachers. In particular, there's a provision that allows states to set aside 3% of the sub-grant portion of the funds that would have otherwise gone to districts specifically for additional activities that support school leaders. I think that is a real hard thing for states to have. I guess, districts are not going to be that excited to see their proportion of the funds decrease if they don't see a really valuable activity that is to their benefit, that is where those dollars are going. At the same time, the pipeline needs around school leaders, making sure that our teacher leaders have the opportunities to grow and flourish, and that the right people are pursuing school leadership roles and getting the training and support that they need really can't be understated. And so the fact that was specifically put in as a set aside is a big opportunity.
And what about, we talked about just finding teacher effectiveness and equity of access. Does it place as much emphasis on that? And if not, states should be doing it, right?
For school leaders.
School leaders, yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm not sure, there really aren't the same reporting requirements. That's an interesting.
We just identified a new opportunity
That's
for
an
states
interesting
here.
little note, but absolutely right, there's no reason that states couldn't extend.
Yes.
To look at principal distribution as well.
And isn't that what we find too when they do those surveys of teachers leaving school, just a lot of times because they don't feel supported by the leadership, so it seems like an opportunity to focus on making sure every teacher, or every child has a high quality teacher. So much of being a high quality teacher is being in a school that supports them and has the leadership that can ensure that they are high quality.
Yeah, they're just so interrelated. We cannot talk about teacher quality without talking about principal quality. We know our best teachers want to be with strong leaders.
And so often we do talk about them as separate pieces. I admittedly lost my train of thought. So this is big work and it's hard work, but work worth doing. And so you're saying there's a lot of hard thinking, a lot of stakeholder engagement. But if you could sit down with a chief or a governor or a legislator, what should they be doing? I mean, what are the action steps they should be taking now and next year for that matter to really meet on this piece of the work?
Yeah, so I think the first piece is the stakeholder engagement piece, finding lots of different practitioner voices to hear directly from, the needs of our urban teachers and our rural teachers are not interchangeable. The needs in more affluent districts and higher needs districts are quite different. So really, hearing from lots of people who are really in classrooms, in schools, working with teachers, I think is critically important. I think taking the time to look at the data that you have about what you've been doing, I think that's one of the hardest things to find the time to actually do, especially when you're looking forward. Well, why would we want to look back? But
why wouldn't you want longitudinal data?
But
there should be a campaign about this.
there's probably, and I think the first thing is states, take the time to actually identify all the different data sources that they have, which probably goes beyond the really obvious things that they could take off right away. They probably have even more things that are telling them about not just the performance of their teachers, but what their teachers need, and school leaders as well. And so taking the time to identify those data sources, triangulate those data sources, and really find out what they're telling you. And then, from there, starting to think about what do we know we want to continue doing because it's working. What do we absolutely see that it makes no sense to continue doing because we don't have a shred of evidence?
Which is sometimes the harder part.
Yeah,
Stop doing the thing that's
it's
not
really
working.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard
Especially good practice, excellent practice.
to end working practice. And sometimes it's a matter of saying, we don't feel like we should abandon this, but we don't have the data that supports continuing it. How are we going to get some data? What will we need to do to actually know that we can go forward?
The flip side to that too is I think the issue that's a complaint about education reform a lot is don't do it for 2 years and give up because the data doesn't show right. But stay in the course to let something work, but don't just keep it just to keep it right. It's a balance.
And the other piece, really big piece of ESSA that we haven't talked about yet is the requirements around evidence base, and particularly in professional development activities and class size reduction and things under Title II, and it's going to be a big issue for school improvement sites, is this requirements around evidence base and how do we know that what we're doing is working. And states are going to have some big decisions to make. Are they going to develop menus for districts? That these are the things we've already identified as meeting the tiers of evidence as required under ESSA, or are they going to identify practices that they clearly see as not supported by the evidence base? Are they, and I think some states probably want to head in that direction. Other states probably have less of an appetite for putting that menu out there. But then what kind of support are they going to give districts in working through the evidence? It makes little sense for hundreds of districts to be going through the same exercise of determining if certain practices are evidence-based, or how do we make sure there's good resources within each state's own parameters that they're going to set.
Yeah, great point. One thing you were talking about earlier that I just want to touch on a little, my sort of favorite opportunity that I hope states would take would be to use this while we're resetting conversations and meeting our data systems where they are anyway, is you're talking about triangulating data about your teachers and figuring out what works. I'd love to see states sitting down in a planning process and thinking, what does 30 years of good teaching look like, 2010, 5, day 1? And then also, how does that map back into teacher prep, and what does that mean for what we should be doing in educator preparation? And that in turn should inform the data that's going back to inform the continuous improvement of educator preparation as well. Not explicitly laid out in the law, but feels like a huge opportunity for me to think about this really holistically.
Yeah, and certainly allowable, under Title II. And I think we have to be moving toward systems and continuum. And the more we think about where it starts with teacher preparation and how we much more seamlessly integrate how teachers are prepared and how they enter the classroom and the professional learning that goes on after that is all to the better. There has been some considerable conversation around the teacher prep academies that are allowed under Title II. It's a very clear marker that non-IHE driven programs are not just allowable, but encouraged. Yeah, very much encouraged. Yeah. I know there are mixed feelings about some of the things around them, particularly that states could grant them the ability to give the equivalent of master's degrees, being recognized, certificates that would be allow you to move on the salary schedule and things like that. So I don't know whether states are going to go down that path or not, but it's certainly an opportunity to both think about your traditional programs and how they can best be preparing teachers for the classroom, as well as non-traditional options as well.
And building on the opportunity that you're saying, that we've got to be planful and thoughtful in how we go through all of this. Reminded of a colleague telling me that, maybe I won't call out the state. In one state, the way they've gone about their sort of alternative certification, non-IHE program policies, that there's hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of them now. Certainly a varying quality when you have that many. So thinking through, what are we really trying to accomplish? Maybe it's not about quantity, but it's really about quality and how we, like you said, make sure we're thoughtful about how teachers go from being students in the preparation program classroom to being teachers in the classroom. You were also reminding me, talking about systems, I heard a great quote once that I think is so important to all of this. On the next webinar, we're talking about the importance of information about where kids go on after high school. And governments exist in silos, the data heavily exists in silos, but kids don't come in pieces. So you have to overcome this, well, this data's here, and this data's here, this policy's here, this policy's here, and think a lot more systemically and comprehensively about what kids actually need, because they don't care where your data is. They care that they have opportunities to succeed on the other side.
And one more thing on the teacher prep piece is, I don't think anybody thinks it's too likely that APA, the Higher Ed Act, will be authorized this year, but I think there are some, growing predictions that we could see it next year. And so states that are more systemic in thinking about how teacher prep fits into this whole piece of the puzzle might be a step ahead of the game when APA rolls out.
Heard it here first, folks. Sandy Jacobs says AGA is moving next
year. No, that is not. She did not say that.
Sorry, I keep blanking. Oh, I did want to add on a couple of pieces to what you were saying about what states should really be doing to build on this work, and agree 1,000% on all of those pieces, and certainly this engagement and clinicalness and really looking at data obviously would be the advice of the data quality campaign as well. Another thing that we think states really need to continue to think about is the quality of that information and making sure that they're continuing to focus on the implementation of the high quality teacher-student data link. If you want to have information about teacher performance, you have to make sure that it's good information that teachers develop reliable systems. And one of the key components of that, called TSDL, is teacher roster verification, that they get the opportunity to say, yep, these were the kids in my class, these are the kids that I taught. And it's sort of like 2-in-1 data quality check, opportunities to engage stakeholders built into that link. Another, that's sort of, we say, answer to everything is your governance body. It's encouraging them to doing some of this data triangulation and making sure it's quality, thinking about how all the stuff that we've been
Territory. I just would, if I could underscore anything, well, actually, I'm going to underscore a couple of things, so I'm going to take that back. The idea that that ESSA is walking back where we've gone on teacher effectiveness, I just really wish we could strike that from the conversation. Without a doubt, there were federal carrots and sticks for promoting teacher effectiveness policy.
I think, okay.
Okay, I'm being told that we have sound issues, so excuse us for pausing for a moment for technical difficulties. Technology is the greatest until it isn't. So we're going to keep going. We're sorry. I've been on webinars with that echo back before, so our apologies. But we're going to power through, and maybe we'll find another way to make the key points we had in writing, so that you don't have to talk about our technology. Go ahead.
Hopefully it hasn't been terrible for a long time. So that first point about the idea that we are not abandoning teacher effectiveness practices. The second that while it's true that ESSA itself, the Title II provisions in particular don't dramatically change anything around requirements for use of the funds for teachers and leaders, the equity provision is really important, not just as an opportunity, but as a requirement. That really the underpinning of everything is equal access. I just think it's so important.
Agreed, and I can't wait to see the bright spots in which states do that. So with that, I'm going to wrap us up. My own sort of reminder of this, build on that, is that at the end of the day, we really see that resources feedback as a data bill. It is an opportunity to use information to be transparent about what's working for kids and what isn't. And that's always been the spirit of this law, is that equity of access and equity of outcomes. We're excited. This is an awesome and a true sense of the word responsibility for states to take on hard work but important work to do. And just a reminder that we see our core policy priorities to make data work for students as a way to meet the obligations that you have to ESSA, but really pursue into the next decade before there's another federal education law, a plan and system that's about improving education going forward. Please join us next time, 1 week from today, on Wednesday, July 20th at 3 p.m., hopefully technical issue free. We're going to be talking about some of the other opportunities, some of the so-called hidden gems in the Every Student Succeeds Act, particular data points that are now required in reporting, such as chronic absence,
post-secondary enrollment, growth, and more. So we hope you'll join us in 1 week. And thank you so much, Sandy, for coming over. This is a wonderful conversation. Good afternoon, everyone.